Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you've all had a super fantastic, sparkling Tune-Up Tuesday. So how did you go with changing I can't to how can I? How did you get on with that today? I actually did pretty well. But then I'm also in the habit of doing that as well. There are times I go, I just don't want to deal with this. Instead of saying I can't, I just say, I don't want to deal with it. And that's my answer to that. But most of the time it's how can I? How can I do XYZ? How can I make this work for my business? How can I tweak this so it better fits my lifestyle? So there's those sort of how can I questions. So how did you do with that today? What am I trying to think of? What was I trying to think of? Oh yeah, your tell your story question. Oh my goodness, I am just so. Anyway, so how did you do with the I can't? Today we had. I was practicing that today, like I always do. I had a very productive morning and a very quiet afternoon on the chat, so I was able to help out with some other chats that had come in, rather than the person had assigned themselves to chats. We were able to clean some of those up and get some other stuff done, some notes taken and things like that. So things to help people in the future. So it was a very good afternoon. I felt a very productive day today. It didn't feel like it was dragging. It was just a nice pace for us to go at, So there was no sort of like scrambling because there were chats coming in left, right, and center. It was just a nice paced day to day, and I quite enjoyed that. So I'm kind of hoping I have more of that because I've got some projects that I'm working on to help in the help chat. So I want to get those projects completed as well. So I hope that trend kind of continues a little bit longer so I can get some more stuff done. Let's see, what else have we got? Oh yeah, your tell your story question of the day. Are you named after anyone, or why did your parents give you the names they did? And then our family tree, there's some very interesting, I'll tell you, there are some very interesting answers to that. And somebody asked the question. So I had, hang on, I got my notes. Oh, what's in this book? I forget where I'm writing things. So we have Jessica, and Jessica is from Kansas City. Ooh, I think you're the second one we've had from Kansas City. Kansas is very interesting genealogy. So Jessica here, she wants to know, are there some baby naming traditions to observe? So I thought this was a very interesting question. And so I know of the traditions I have come across, or the customs that I have come across when I have been researching. I thought, let me dig a little deeper to find out a little more. And so we can impart. Now, some countries have naming rules that you like, about how you can name your children. Some countries will actually reject names if you decide to put it on a birth certificate. And some states here, I think it was just about every state had, I gotta find this again because this one was so funny. So even here in the States, they have baby name rules by state. And some of them are things like you can have up to, where was it? It was Alabama, I think it was, or was it Arizona? I'm going to scroll back up here again. I left this up here so I could quickly look at it. Yes, so in Arizona, there is a 141 character limit, 45 for the first name, 45 for the middle name, and 45 for the last, and 6 for a suffix. Apostrophes, hyphens, and periods and spaces are okay. Most of them were, you can call your baby anything you want as long as it's the 26 letters of the alphabet. And I thought, okay. And, some were allowed to have the little marks above the letters. Some were like, absolutely not. Some allowed numbers, some didn't. But the funniest one I came across, where did Vermont go? Vermont says you may use trademark names, IBM diseases, trademark names like IBM, diseases like anthrax, and obscenities, but we highly recommend against it. I was sort of like, who would want to name their kids those names? And then a woman in Wisconsin wanted to name her child a number, and the state required that the number be spelled out. So it wasn't allowed to be like, if she wanted to call her 7, she couldn't just put the number 7 on there. She actually had to spell it out as SEVEN. And so, there's some crazy naming rules out there when it comes to what you call your children. And I'm just sort of like, keep it simple. Just check to make sure that if they've got a first name, a middle name, and a surname, that when you put the initials together, they don't spell anything bad. And then another one that I saw pointed out, which I hadn't even thought of, because I always think you got to look at and I'm looking at people's initials on things, and I'm like, who on earth named these children, these poor kids? But they showed one where with monograms, the initial letter of the last name is made big, and then the first letter of the first name and the first letter of the middle name are either side. And they pulled out this guy, and it was, I can't remember the name, but it was his initials were PGI, with I being the last name. So the I got put into the middle of the monogram with a P on one side and a G on the other. So be careful about those sorts of things. If you're looking at doing monograms, or you're looking at having initials on things, what are you spelling? And I remember I was on physical therapy one time, and there was a woman. She was all 5 foot nothing. She was an amazing woman. She was a real drill sergeant when it came to getting your physical therapy in. And still remember the day that she had a guy that was like 6'4", and she was, like I said, 5 foot nothing. And she was like, step together, step together, step together, step together. And she was also 6 months pregnant at the time too, so she had this big belly going. But she said that her and her husband decided they wanted 6 kids. And so she sat down and came up with 6 boy names, 6 girl names, and made sure that none of the initials made any words. And basically it was going to be, if the first one's a boy, first name on the list. And because they prioritized the names in the order they would use them. First girl, first one off that list. Second girl, second one off the list. And it wasn't like going up and down, well, here's our 6 names. Nope, start at the top and work your way down. And that's how they were naming their 6 kids. I'm like, more power to you. But some of the interesting things of customs over the years. A lot of countries kind of followed this naming pattern. And when I was looking at different ones, a lot of them would throw in different things as well as like on religion, and that on whether they have their surname as the first name and so it's surname then the first name. But so a lot of countries kind of followed something similar to this. The first son is named after the father's father, so after his paternal grandfather. The second son is named after the mother's father, so the maternal grandfather. The third son is named after the father. The fourth son is named after the father's oldest brother. And it's only just going down to 4 on each. The first daughter is named after the mother's mother. The second daughter is named after the father's mother. The third is named after the mother. And the fourth is named after the mother's oldest sister. And that was kind of loosely a lot of different countries, like England and Scotland and Ireland. Germany was in there. Italy was in there to a degree. But then you also had things coming into play, like if they were Catholic, the children were named for the saint whose feast day fell closest to the child's birthday or day of baptism. And so that was kind of interesting. And if it was a male and there was a female baby, they would have to feminize the name so it was a female name. And vice versa, if it was a female, they had to maleise. That doesn't sound right. They had to make it sound more masculine. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And then in Hungary, when you see their name, it's actually surname, first name. So the family name comes first, and then the first name of the child. And then there are religions like Jewish, where they actually, in most of the Jewish cases, they would be given 2 names. They're usually biblical names. and they were given two. There was a religious name that they were given for use in the synagogue, and then there was a secular name that was given for everyday use. So this is just all interesting stuff. And when I was researching a family in Mexico, I learned a new way of doing the names, and they would kind of follow for the first name for the baby's name. They would follow after the father's father, the mother's father, and all that sort of stuff. But on the last names, they were given two surnames. The first surname of the father. The first is the first surname of the father, because everybody has double names in Mexico and Spanish. This is the tradition, or was the tradition. I don't know if they still practice this today. But the first surname they're given is the first surname of the father, and the second surname is from the first surname of the mother. So it was the mother's maiden name, the father's birth name, family name, and both the bride and groom would keep their birth names, and they would refer to the wife as Señora de, which meant wife of, and then give the husband's last name. So it's kind of interesting going through all of these different things. And then other customs I discovered during research, and mainly with my English ancestors, was they would, the first two children, well, quite often within the family, they would have a last name as a middle name. And it would turn out that last name that was the middle name would either be the mother's maiden name or her mother's maiden name. So it made it interesting when it came to researching what was the mother's maiden name. Well, we've got, this person has Longland was one of the names that we had in there. Had a middle name of Longland. Now, was that the mother's maiden name or was that her mother's maiden name? So you could start researching that. So it gave you a starting point to try and find the information on the mother or the grandmother, the maternal grandmother in that family. And we have a lot of people with Longland first name, then Longland Eakins. And then we also have in the Eakins clan, there were a lot of George, Thomas, James, John, and William were the 5 most common names to be put with Eakins, and you might as well be looking up somebody like John Smith. Because I have gone through 181 John Eakins over a 5-year span to find the one that fitted in the tree. It took me a couple of years to find him, so not an easy task to do. So so when you're looking at naming customs, those are some of the customs that are out there. And like I said, a lot of them will be within the guidelines of the first son is after the father's father and that sort of thing. But depending on what, and you'll start to see the patterns coming through your tree as well as to what naming custom that they used. And then, of course, if you have those that have to have the lineage, where you've got George Smith the first, George Smith the second, George Smith the third, and they just got the numbers at the end. Those ones are kind of fun because it's kind of like, okay, well, if he's number 6, I know that there's 5 Georges before him that all have that same name. It's just figuring out which one married which woman, and the order that the women were brought into the family, and then you've just got to figure out the wives' names and who matches up with who. So it's kind of fun doing that. But those are just some of the naming traditions that are out there. Some people still follow those naming traditions, and many others have gone off on their own. And there was a really cool article. Where is it? It's one of these tabs I have opened. Nope, it's not that one. I'll have to see if I can find it. Oh, yeah. This one here was done by cafemum.com, and they have, I thought this was kind of cute, 25 rules of baby naming. And they had things like, don't name your child after food, skip stripper names, avoid names that people hate. And they actually have a link that you can go to see the most hated baby names of the year. Think about your child's future email address. And the example they gave had Peter Enis, E-N-I-S. Sounds lovely, until one day his company assigns him a work email address that becomes first initial, last name. I'll let you figure out what that spells. Number 5, play the rhyme game to make sure that your kids on the playground won't be able to. And they said if you have any questions, just run the name by an 8-year-old boy and see what he comes up with. I was like, what? Avoid names with 8,000 different spellings, like Caitlin, for example. There's I mean, they had four up here on the screen. Don't get all creative and make up a name. So they're talking about like taking a name and splicing it together and that sort of thing. Yeah, I have found some that have come up with the most beautiful names when they have actually done that. And I'm sort of like, why? Because there are some beautiful blends out there. Consider your kids' initials. Like the author of this article is Julie Ann Ryan. Spells jar. But she says, that doesn't sound too bad, but think of Ashley Suzanne Smith. Might feel a little differently. Don't forget monograms. This is where I saw the monogram with the pig, where the letters spell out pig. Try not to be inspired by random things. For example, the couple who wanted to name their baby after the Facebook like button. Don't be funny because your kid's name isn't a joke. I mean, even in my own family, I had a William Richard Williams. And I was like, who on earth will call their kid William when your last name is Williams? It's like Roger, or what was the other one? I knew a woman called Joan Jones, but she married into the Jones family, so that was not a given name. As I say, your kid's name is important. Don't try too hard with things like Aristotle, Harvard, Yale, Einstein, because then you're kind of setting the expectations a little high. Skip offensive names. Remember, your baby will be a human, not an animal. So like Bear Blue. Tame the fanatic sports fan in you or your partner. They said that during the World Cup, they saw a lot of FIFA, FIFA, which is the Federal International Football Association, I think it is. And there are also reports of ESPN Montana and Crimson Tide Red. Don't do the celebrity thing with the bizarre baby names they come up with. Avoid names that a country would ban. And I was even reading that New Zealand has some of the strictest rules when it comes to naming babies. So it was one of the countries with the strictest rules. Think about your child's future career. Don't get cutesy, because if you have your heart set on Mercedes, what if they happen to marry somebody whose last name is Driver? And yes, I have seen the military guys that were sergeant or major and that sort of thing too, which I kind of think is hilarious. But skip the free brand endorsements on things like Gucci, Cartier, Tiffany, Tiffany's as well. But then of course Tiffany's don't give your sweet baby an evil name. Don't name your kid after a pet. I was like, what? And then they put their king, spike, or bandit. Avoid adjectives. So like somebody tried to name their kid trendy. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Don't give your son a girly name. And she makes reference to one of my favorite songs, which is Johnny Cash's A Boy Named Sue. And I love that name. That song's really cool. And then don't listen to anyone else. That's your choice. So you can listen to the guidelines, not listen to the guidelines. But the choice is ultimately yours. So make good choices and make sure that people can spell them. Yes, I have some crazy names in my family, and I look at them and go, you pronounce it how? And they're like, oh, this way. And I'm like, yeah, that don't make sense. But then I have some great unusual names in the family as well. So that's really cool. But anyway, I got to get going because I have a puppy I have to take for WALK. I'm ready to go. Just going to put my hair in my hat and put her in her harness. And it looks like it's pretty dark outside. Okay, we're out of here. Hopefully we will avoid the coyotes. So they were out last night when we were walking, and they were, just as we were walking on the last stretch towards the RV, we could hear the coyotes partying, and it sounded like they were getting closer because you could hear them coming. I don't know how far away they actually are that you can hear them, but they sounded like they were getting closer. So I just hurried up Zeph, and she kind of understood that we got to move. So she starts trotting along next to me as I'm fast walking. But anyway, go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Oh, and thank you, Jessica from Kansas City, for your question about baby names, about baby naming traditions. And we will catch you guys back bright and early tomorrow morning for a Winning Wednesday. Hey, Konera. Oh, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening too.